In this video, we will discuss class actions. In the United States, there are actually different kinds of class actions. We're going to focus on Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 23B3 class actions, which is the usual class action for plaintiffs seeking money. Our normal rule is that individuals bring their own cases. So if John wants to sue Fred, John sues Fred. And if Mary wants to sue Fred, then Mary can bring her own case against Fred. Or if it makes sense, Mary and John together can sue Fred. A class action is different because now John, as a representative of other plaintiffs, sues Fred. So in a class action, we have one or two parties who are acting as a representative, and we need members of a class that the representative represents. Most class actions are brought by plaintiffs, but you can also have a class of defendants. And our class could be people who used a certain kind of medicine, or people who owned a certain kind of car that was defective, and we have someone who's acting as their representative in the litigation. And you'll sometimes see the class representative called the lead plaintiff. Our first step in a class action is to decide if we need a class, and the requirements are numerosity and commonality. Numerosity means we have too many people for it to be practical for them all to join in one lawsuit. Often in a class action, you can have hundreds or even thousands of members in the class. Our next requirement is commonality, and that means the members of the class have at least one common question of law and fact. So let's say we have a company that makes coffee makers, and a number of people complain that the coffee makers catch on fire. So a common issue of fact could be that each member of the class bought an XYZ coffee maker. And a common legal issue for each of the class members could be, did the manufacturer create a defective product? So if we have many people who bought the same coffee maker and it caught on fire, we should have a class based on numerosity and because each of them has a common issue of law and fact. For a 23B3 class action, we also have to show that these common issues of law and fact predominate over individual questions and that a class action is superior to individual actions. So what do we mean by common issues of law and fact predominating over individual issues? We don't want some members of the class to have important differences from other members. Some members of the class shouldn't have situations that make them much different from other members of the class. What if not everyone had the same issue with the coffee maker catching on fire? What if some people bought the coffee makers back in 2002 and it's actually too late for them to bring a lawsuit? So because we have some people with important issues of law and fact that are different from others, they couldn't all belong together in the same class. On the other hand, if everybody in the class bought a coffee maker in 2012 that was known for catching on fire, then they could all belong to the class because they have the same issues of law and fact. Next, we need to think whether a class action is superior to each person individually bringing his own case. Well, let's say one plaintiff has about $20 in damages, another plaintiff has $40 in damages, and basically everyone averages out to about $30 in damages each. People might not want to sue just to get $30. But in a class action, we just need a lead plaintiff and the damages might be about $3 million. Now, if the judge decides to approve the class action, the lead plaintiff might be representing a class of people who bought a certain kind of coffee maker in 2012. Now the members of the class don't really have to do anything. They can just watch and wait as the lead plaintiff litigates the case. At certain points in the case, members of the class are allowed to opt out, and they can pursue their cases individually. So to recap, Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 23 tells us that to have a class, we need common issues of fact and law, and that there would be too many members for it to be practical for them all to sue together in the same lawsuit. Also, Rule 23 talks about the requirements for a class representative, but I didn't talk about that in this video. You can feel free to get in touch with me to discuss it. For Rule 23B3, those common issues of law and fact have to predominate over individual questions, and we need to show that the class action is superior to individual. If you'd like to discuss class actions or any other matter related to U.S. law, feel free to submit your comments below, stop by my website, and please visit my blog.